So it's June 6th, and I have already decided there are 7 players that I will be drafting this many times this year. Now, you're probably thinking, Lucas, what a stupid video. Drafts don't even happen until late August. Training camp hasn't even started yet. What if things change? But if you're a real one, you've already been drafting over on Underdog Fantasy with us. And I cannot convince myself to take any of these players at their current ADP. Frankly, I would rather rap battle Kendrick Lamar than force myself into taking one of these players where they're currently being drafted. Nobody on the planet is arguing that Green Bay isn't a better situation for Josh Jacobs, because from an NFL perspective, a football perspective, it absolutely is. But from a fantasy football perspective, I do think we need to slow our horses just a bit. These are Josh Jacobs' single season stats over his 5-year career. Now, I want you to find the outlier for me. And to help you out, it is very clearly his 2022 season. He only has one fully healthy season played in his entire career. He has averaged 4 yards or less per carry in 3 of his 5 years. He only has 2 finishes inside of the top 12 running backs. Yet right now we are taking him as the running back 11 on Underdog Fantasy. Now, again, all those stats are when he was on the Raiders. He could absolutely have a bounce back season in Green Bay. I am not ruling that out whatsoever. But this is where I'm pumping the brake, that I'm betting on a breakout, because only A.J. Dillon over the last 3 years has scored 7 rushing touchdowns in a single season on the Green Bay Packers. So I don't think it's a guarantee that Josh Jacobs is just sniffing double-digit touchdowns, that he's getting all these goal line carries. I don't think that's a guarantee. If he hovers right around 8 touchdowns, which is where I have him projected at, I think that's completely fair. Now, you look at the receiving work as well. I'll pull his stats back up on the screen here, right? His receiving work has been his saving grace. A lot of the time you see 64 targets, 50 plus targets in 3 of his 5 years. But I actually think we're going to get a healthy dose of Marshawn Lloyd this year. Now, Matt LaFleur has already said that he thinks the usage of multiple backs is necessary in the league. But what I'm really intrigued by is their offensive coordinator, Adam Stenavich. He had this to say about Marshawn Lloyd's playing time.
He didn't have to play back in 19, right? It was Aaron Jones, Jamaal, and then AJ just had to play 1 game, basically. Can you see that same thing with Lloyd, or do you kind of need to get him out there?
No, I would like to get him out there as much as possible. I think, he's got a skill set that's a little bit different than AJ's as far as his speed. He's not quite the bruiser that he is, obviously, but he's got a different type of skill set. So it'll be nice to get him the ball in space and just see what he can do, because I think he's going to add a good explosive element to the offense for sure.
So as much as I think Josh Jacobs is in a better football situation, as much as I think he can play an Aaron Jones kind of role in this offense this year, let's not pretend that hasn't added up to anything more than 12.5 fantasy points over the last 3 years. I love Rome, the prospect. I love Rome, the dynasty asset, but I hate Rome, the fantasy football redraft and best ball asset in 2024. Yes, the Bears, they took Rome with the 9th pick in this year's draft. They spent this upper echelon capital on him. But let's recap what also the Chicago Bears did this offseason. They went out and traded for Keenan Allen, who has seen 145 plus targets in 5 of his last 7 years in the league. They went out and signed DeAndre Swift to a 3-year, $24 million contract. Yes, they still have DJ Moore. They still have Cole Kmet. I can't believe I'm using Cole Kmet in an argument as to why I'm not drafting Rome Odunze. But while they did draft Caleb Williams, the Bears have never had a 4,000-yard passer in their franchise history. Caleb could do that in his rookie season. I'm certainly not going to rule that out, but let's not pretend that Shane Waldron did JSN any favors last year as a rookie, with DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett playing alongside him as well. Rome kind of finds himself in the same awkward situation. I think Rome will be perfectly fine down the road, but as I said at the top of this segment, I love Rome, the talent. He's going to be a phenomenal NFL player, but I just don't see the wide receiver 37 price tag worth it while he's on the Chicago Bears this season playing with DJ Moore and Keenan Allen. I want to start by talking about Nicholas Jamaal Chubb with high respect as to how incredible his career has been thus far. Nick Chubb, just look at this. Over 5 yards per carry in every single year of his career. over 1,200 rushing yards in 3 of his 5 years, 4 finishes as a top 10 running back in fantasy football. That being said, I cannot draft a player coming off his severity of an injury. Chubb had to have his ACL, I'm going to read this all just to make sure I get it right, his MCL, his meniscus, and his ACL all surgically repaired this offseason. This is not the same as Breece Hall, as I've seen thrown out there for a multitude of reasons, okay? Breece was 22. Nick Chubb is 28. These are not the same age of running back. That 6-year difference, the wear and tear that Nick Chubb has on his body compared to what Breece Hall hasn't had, that makes a difference in these recoveries. Breece's injury also was a clean ACL tear. Chubb's is obviously a lot messier. More complex of a comeback. Has science evolved? Yes. I'm boiling that in, though. That's why this is not the same as Breece. Breece had his bounce back season on the back of 95 targets as well. Nick Chubb has never seen 50 in his career. He has seen 45 in one season, only half of what Breece Hall saw last year. We all know running back efficiency plummets year one after an ACL injury. If you haven't, there's a factual statement for you. You can go look it up. There's a ton of science done on it. And even though Nick Chubb is one of the best pure rushers we have seen in the NFL, I think assuming anything more than 4.5 per carry this year is a little bit reckless. Again, I love Nick Chubb, the talent. I really, really hope he bounces back. He has been so much fun to watch as an NFL player. I want him to have a strong finish to his NFL career. But I'm just going to side with history here. Despite the risks being baked in his current ADP, I can't force myself to do it at running back 36. I'm getting really tired of playing this game with the Chiefs where we overdraft their rookie wide receiver that everybody thinks they like because they're now tied to Patrick Mahomes and there's no other competition in the wide receiver room. You look at Xavier Worthy's prospect profile. We all knew his calling card was speed, and more speed, right? He's a perfectly fine prospect. I didn't think he should have gone first round, but again, personal opinion. So it's exciting that he ends up with the Kansas City Chiefs, right? Everybody keeps throwing out Tyreek Hill. We're already setting the bar way too high by doing that. But what are defenses going to do? Like, stop playing too high safety at one of the highest rates in the league against them? Like, what is going to change that's going to make Xavier Worthy worth this wide receiver 35 price tag? You still have Travis Kelce, who, yes, is on the back end of his career, but is still a vital part of this offense. They also signed Hollywood Brown this offseason, who is no slouch, might actually be one of the better wide receivers they have signed and brought in over the last few years. And Rashee Rice will be on the football field at some point this year. I don't think he gets any more than a 10-game suspension. I just see no reason. I'm going to list off a list of guys I would much rather be taking in this range. No reason we should be drafting him ahead of guys like Ken Walker, Alvin Kamara. Like, let's take these surefire assets instead of playing this game that many of you all have played before and have already lost. Before I dive into Nico, allow me to reiterate once again, these are player takes solely for the 2024 season, not for Dynasty Fantasy Football. I love Nico in Dynasty formats, but in Best Ball redraft this year, I can't get behind this wide receiver 15 price tag right now. It just comes out on the wrong side of the cost-benefit analysis for me. And you could throw all the counter arguments out there for this. Like, throw them at me right away because I know what you're going to say. Follow the money, man. Nico just got paid. He absolutely did. Diggs is washed, right? He can only play 8 good games over the last 2 years, right? He falls off in the second half of the season. You can throw all those at me. I get it. I hear you. But first and foremost, I refuse to believe the Texans went out and traded for Diggs, traded out of their first round pick to play second fiddle to Nico Collins. Just think about it for 1 second. You don't go out and trade out of your first round pick with the Minnesota Vikings to acquire additional second round draft capital to swing at a high impact player like Stephon Diggs, only for him to play behind a guy who was on pace for only 125 targets last year. You just don't do that. Secondly, Nico Collins, he was a completely different player on the road versus at home last year. Now, can Stephon Diggs help solve some of that? Absolutely. But just please take a look at these splits for me, and I'm going to break them down for you. 65 receiving yards per game on the road versus 100 yards per game at home. He only had 1 touchdown on the road compared to 7 touchdowns at home. Nico can continue to be great at home, but the potential variance there for a player who just added Stephon Diggs, who still has Tank Dell playing alongside him, which CJ Stroud absolutely loves Tank Dell. The variance here is far too high for me to have a ton of confidence investing in a player at wide receiver 15 that could easily finish closer to wide receiver 25 this year. I'll just get the semi-hot take out of the way right now. I think Tyjae Spears actually outscores Tony Pollard this year and actually has a better chance at taking over the backfield from him by the end of the season, at a greater chance than we may realize. Frankly, I saw all I needed to see from Tony Pollard at the end of last season. Am I supposed to believe this is going to change as he goes to the Tennessee Titans, who, yeah, made some nice, big, flashy moves this offseason, but are still a worse situation than the Dallas Cowboys? I get it's like baked into his running back 29 ADP already, but just look at the difference in these efficiency numbers, y'all. It is night and day. 4.7 true yards per carry to 3.9 in 2023. 2022, 5.9 yards per touch to 4.3 last year. 8.8% breakaway run rate to literally half of that last year. Sure, he was coming off of a leg injury, right? That may have impacted some things, but signing with the Tennessee Titans, I'm sorry that doesn't inspire me. I'm sorry I'm not a Will Levis believer like some people are. I'm sorry I don't think Brian Callahan can just come in, sign all these weapons, and make this offense go boom. Maybe that's just because I'm such a strong believer in Tyjae Spears. Like, you look at the range of players that are going around Tony Pollard: Zach Moss, James Conner, Raheem Mostert, Jordan Love. I'd rather reach down a tad for Jaden Daniels, honestly, with the upside that he has. Javonte Williams, wait a full round for Tyjae Spears. I already said I think Tyjae Spears outscores Tony Pollard this year. Like, I'm sorry, but in the wise words of former President George W. Bush,
there's an old saying in Tennessee, I know it's in Texas, probably in Tennessee, that says, "Fool me once, shame on you. If fool me, we can't get fooled again."
I really want to like George Kittle this year because at face value, he hasn't finished lower than the tight end 5 in fantasy points per game over the last 6 seasons. He's on a 6-season streak of at least finishing as a tight end 5 in fantasy points per game. Underneath the surface, though, is where we start to find a lot of our issues with George Kittle going into 2024. Let's maybe start off with the fact that George Kittle scored less than 5 half PPR fantasy points in 7 of 16 regular season games. Nearly half of the time, this dude was a bust in your starting lineup. I'm sorry, that's not a dude I really want to draft as a tight end 7. The second thing we need to point out, though, is that his efficiency and opportunity metrics actually spiked quite a bit last season. He was 4th in unrealized air yards, 3rd in air yards and air yard share, 2nd in average depth of target. You look at this streak: 1st in yards per target, 1st in yards per reception as well. Now, he's typically like top 5 in those numbers, but still notable that he is number 1 at all of them. And I have been saying it all offseason long thus far. The efficiency is going to regress in this 49ers offense. Purdy is not going to throw 31 touchdowns and 9.6 yards per reception this year. You can book it. After high efficiency seasons like this, it is almost always a guarantee these offenses regress in some capacity. Last notable one that I had, Aaron Rodgers, right? I believe it was 2019. When he threw for darn near 40 touchdowns. I can't remember if that's the exact year off the top of my head. But the following year, everyone's drafting him as a top 7 quarterback, and then he finishes outside of the top 12, right? This is what I'm worried about for this 49ers offense. I think they're still going to be one of the highest scoring offenses in the league. I still think they're going to pump out a ton of effective and efficient plays, but these metrics always regress. And let's not forget, too, that unless something happens to Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, or Christian McCaffrey, George Kittle is still the 4th option in this offense. Alrighty, y'all, that's it. That's all I got. 7 players that I will be drafting, count them up, 0 times this year. If you want to see why I am so out on all these players, my season-long projections for all of them, fellasdraftguide.com. Our 2024 draft guide is officially out, $10 there, or if you sign up for Underdog Fantasy with the code FELLAS, you can scan the QR code here. They will give you a welcome bonus of up to $250 as well. And you will get our draft guide for absolutely free. You just have to make sure you join one of their contests, and we will get that sent over to you. We will be back tomorrow with a podcast episode. We're going to be talking about our favorite values over on Underdog Fantasy, some strategy to their contests over there as well. We'll be back next week with a plethora of content as well. So if you're not subscribed already, make sure you do that. Turn on those notifications as well, and you will be alerted when all of our newest episodes are up. YouTube videos like this, podcast episodes, and shorts right at your disposal. Till next time, stay safe, stay healthy. I'll sign off from now. Deuces.